Hi, my name is Kathryn Clark. I'm here to talk about spirituality. So, I was recently in a place and there were birds everywhere, like everywhere. I could hear them. The music was beautiful of their singing and they were landing, taking off. And I finally said, there are a lot of birds here. And the person I was with said, well, this is a bird sanctuary. And I thought, okay, now it makes sense. And the thing about a bird sanctuary is that the birds are safe. This is a safe place for birds. Nobody's going to harm them, frighten them, interfere with them going about their business. And you can see it in the concentrations of birds that are present and that are making this beautiful music. So it reminded me of one of our teachings in the church. And one of our teachings is this: your conscience is your secret core and your sanctuary. There you are alone with God, whose voice echoes in your depths. Wow, that blew my mind. I was taught as a child that my conscience was where I went to add up my sins. And so you can imagine reading that really clicked the perspective for me. And I hope it does for you because it's your secret core and your sanctuary. So when you're thinking about your conscience, really it's the safest place in your life on the planet for you. It's the place where you go to say, I'm tired. I I'm I'm doing a lot of right things. Then maybe there's a couple things that I don't know if they're right or not. And so this there's a lot of pieces to this, but the one is this: God's voice echoes in your depths. Now, have you ever experienced God echoing in your depths where you're sitting here in prayer or you're looking or you're somewhere in the world and something happens where you say, I'm being impacted by something that's bigger than me, that's not of this world that I can see. And again, that's that introspection, that quiet prayer, quiet thought. So someone once said, I don't get it. I can't grab a hold of this God idea. There's no evidence, there's no proof. Now, for those of us who believe and who have worked it, who have embarked on a discipline of prayer every day, we just, there's evidence of God is everywhere in our days, in our lives. Like people call it synchronicity, things that happen that there's no explanation for it, and that the odds of them happening are very remote. Well, when you believe in God, you're blown away. You're thinking, thank you, God. All I can say is thank you. But when you don't believe in God or where you're hostile toward the thought of God, you say, oh, that could happen. That doesn't mean anything. Um, if you want a relationship with God, and I hope you do, because it changes, your love for yourself, your acceptance of yourself, and your peace and your happiness. It changes everything for you. Well, a young man once said he struggled with addiction. At some point, he he met himself in the mirror, as they say, and decided it wasn't for him using these substances. And he said, "Well," they said, "God will help you." And he said, "I didn't know God. I didn't have any context except for a vague Catholic upbringing." But the person told him, "Don't even worry about that. Just fake it till you make it. Just tell God, I believe in you. I just do. I've decided to. I don't feel you. I don't see you. My senses aren't encountering you. I'm like a blind man in the middle of air." That's no problem for God. Don't even worry about that. If you would like to have a faith in God that like helps you to see him everywhere, fake it until you make it. Tell God, I believe in you. God, help my disbelief. Now that was a saint who said that. God, I believe in you. Help my disbelief. Um, that will work for you if you do it over time. Keep doing it. Keep trying. Stay in the game because God wants to meet you. He wants an encounter with you way more. then you want an encounter with him. You know what I mean? Like his love for you is infinite. He is looking at you now with force, hoping that you'll open up a little bit to the possibility not only that he exists, but that he wants to be with you. And people say, well, I haven't really lived a godly life. Well, none of us have. I mean, like the thing, we're living in sin together. That's our collective reality. That's what we can know about all of us. That's what we're sure of. We're all doing our best and we're all making mistakes. So don't let anyone like intimidate you or make you think that because their relationship with God is this way, that it's better than your relationship with God. Maybe you say, well, I really don't have a relationship with God. Well, let me promise you this. You do. God is there in relationship to you, waiting for you to just turn the most little bit toward him so he can start sending you graces. What's a grace? It's a gift. It's a little gift and it changes you and it alters you and it makes you a little thoughtful and a little grateful. And you might say, oh, I wonder if that's a gift from God. I wonder if this is what she's talking about. And, people say, oh, finding a parking spot, you're going to find God. Yeah, sure, whatever you need, you're asking for. Um, God God doesn't always say yes to what we ask him for. Sometimes he holds back because it's not the right time. Sometimes he said, the answer is no, because what we want sometimes isn't what we need. Now, it's like being a child and a parent deciding, I want a banana split. Well, you have a stomach flu, so it won't do you any good. It'll just make you sicker. So I'm not going to give you that today. But maybe in another day, the answer will be yes. And you can have that. We often think we know what we need, and sometimes we're wrong. Anyway, your conscience is your secret core. Okay, how many of us, let's say we think about what we're thinking, and our thinking about ourselves is harsh, and we're thinking, oh, and this person thinks I'm a bad person because I did a thing. Let me throw you something wonderful. Let it go. Don't worry about what people think about you. You don't even know what they think about you for sure. And they're mostly thinking about themselves. And when I was 20, I was a single parent who was divorced and a Catholic. So not your biggest achiever in the Catholic, contest. As a matter of fact, I would have been considered like a Catholic washout. Let's be honest. Let's tell the truth. In terms of Catholicism, being divorced and a single parent at the age of 20, it's not the best look, let's say. Now, what did I have to do for in any context? In any context, never mind Catholicism, it wasn't a great look anywhere. So, what I did by the age of 20, I had a moment where I thought there's so much judgment and condemnation coming at me, and it was coming at me. I'm telling you the truth. I was being judged harshly, that I had to say, I simply can't care. I can't carry this. I simply have to let it go. And I was brought up a Catholic. I did believe in God. Plus I had this thing that really helped me, and that was I knew that God knew me. I knew that God knew me. So I thought, God does not think like any of these people. God doesn't judge like any of these people. So I did have a benefit, and I would like to extend that benefit to you. Don't worry about what anybody thinks of you. Just make sure what you think of you is full of hope and full of trust. And trust yourself to dig out of bad habits and bad relationships and bad like outcomes in education. How many people have flunked a class or two? Okay, it happens. And it shouldn't make you quit. It should make you more determined to keep going. So my wish for you now is that you absolutely let go of what anyone thinks about you. Be free right at this moment. It doesn't matter. Your conscience is your sanctuary. There you are alone with God, whose voice wants to echo in your depths. You have to put yourself in silence so that can happen. So you're in your conscience, you're in prayer, you're thinking, and you're thinking about what someone said about you. They have no business in your conscience. Get that person out. Get the thoughts of them out. Get their opinions out. What do you think about you? You probably understand why you've done some of the things that you do, and you probably don't understand why you've made other mistakes. That's fair. It's understandable. But the piece is only you are going to be able to discover why you're making some of your mistakes. And the way to do that is not like, what the heck is wrong with me? What's my problem? That right away is asking for negative feedback from you. So what you're asking is, wow, that wasn't my best moment. I'm wondering why I made that choice in that moment. I'm wondering what would have been a better choice. And I'm wondering in the future, when I'm in that situation, what it's going to take for me to make the better choice. I think one of the biggest problems that we have in our faith expression, which I'm asking you to join, I am beseeching you, get in the game with us and help us to make this church a place where people like you want to be. We need your help badly. You don't have to change who you are to be part of this. On the contrary, if you I've never changed myself to be part of any Catholic community. I don't care enough. I try to grow in my love for Christ. And what happens from that is the magic. So nobody gets to say, nobody gets to know, nobody gets to judge you. You're not even going to be sure of your own personal judgments. So you leave that with Christ. Now, conscience is your secret core, it's your sanctuary. There you're alone with God, whose voice echoes in your depths. That's just that finishing piece now, echoing in my depths. What the heck does that mean? Okay, so you might be in your conscience, and maybe you're facing a challenge. Maybe someone's, uh, let's say, distorting you, telling lies about you. Making you out to be someone you're not. So it's really hard when that happens because you start querying yourself. You're like, maybe I am. Maybe I am a bad person. But I haven't actually done that thing that I'm being accused of. So how's it echoing in your depths? You're giving it the thought, you're sitting there, and suddenly you get this wave of feeling of relief that says, but you're not doing this. You're not the one who started this. You're not the one behaving in this way. It's not you. And then what happens suddenly, you're free of it. You let it go, the whole thing. You're like, this has nothing to do with me. That person is disturbed, distorting me, has an agenda that's not good for me. And then you can say to yourself, look, I don't know why that person's doing it. It's not my problem. My problem is to say, shake it off. It's not me. I know who I am. And more importantly, God knows me to the core and loves me infinitely. I'm talking about a freedom you're never going to get in this world without this spirituality. So I'll be honest, I love you. I hope you're taking this in. I hope it's helpful. But more than that, I hope that you'll give it a try. Okay, let's take a jump here and think about something else. In your conscience, really, the best part of this for me is you are asked and called to be an independent thinker. You have to think for yourself. You have to be a critical thinker. Now, I'll tell you a story about someone who really had to use that. There was a young woman, and she made a sexual mistake, and alcohol was involved, and wrong choices were made. She felt. So she goes to confession, confesses the sin. She's given absolution. It's over, and away she goes. And this person was practicing her faith pretty seriously, pretty in a disciplined manner. Not everybody does. 100 Catholics are practicing their faith 100 unique ways. So don't ever think that all Catholics should look a certain way. When all people look a certain way in a religion, we tend to think of them as a cult. You know what I mean? That's not a sign of health. It can be a sign of the opposite of a healthy assembly. So, anyway, time goes on. The next week comes, the weekend's there, alcohol's taken, and the same mistake occurs. She makes a sexual mistake that, the same as the last week. So she goes to confession again because she wants to. She recognized this as a bad choice and she wants to be free of it. And she goes into confession to the same priest. And the priest says to her, "You were here last week, and you did the same thing last week. And I'm not giving you absolution because you did it again. You didn't learn. I'm not giving you absolution. Don't come in here looking for absolution when you repeat, you just repeated a mistake." So now, two things could happen. If she was misformed, she could say, "Oh, I'm in a state of mortal sin because I believe that only this priest can remove mortal sin from me." When we know that mortal sin, that nobody knows what mortal sin is, nobody can absolutely judge what is a mortal sin. There are three elements that need to be present for a mortal sin. It has to be serious. There has to be a certain freedom. You have to freely choose this. You can't really be drunk because that's not a free choice, is it? It's not thoughtful. And it has to be deliberate. You have to have a knowledge that this thing is, there's more to that, and we can break it down another time. Suffice to say that people throw around this idea of mortal sin like it's like anyone can guess what it is. That's not true. Really, only God can know for sure what is a mortal sin. Only God can judge. And while we can say something's a serious matter or even grave matter, we can't say how free even we ourselves are in the moments where we make these choices. So, anyway, so this young woman could have gone away thinking, "Oh, I'm in a state of mortal sin. I can't go to communion. And wow, holy, what do I do with this? And how long before this man will absolve me of the sin?" Well, she didn't think like that at all. So she thought, "There's something wrong with this priest. I'm going to someone else." So she got in her car. She drove to someone else. She said, "I made this mistake again. And this priest said he wouldn't absolve me of the sin." And the second priest said, "What was his name? Who did this?" Like that was wrong. He said, "Never mind that. Don't go back to him for confession because that's off." And what the person said, the young woman said was, "Oh my God, he's keeping score. He's remembering my sins and throwing them in my face." Now, would Christ do that? The Christ of Scripture? No way. That's not how Christ was at all. So the second priest said to her, "Okay, no, never mind that. Let's forget about that. Let me ask you this question. Who is this guy? Who is this guy that you're making this mistake with? Does he care about you? Is this serious?" And they began to talk about it. And she explained the circumstances. And he said, "Okay, these aren't sober mistakes. These are mistakes you're making when alcohol is taken." So that's the first thing to look at. Your relationship with alcohol is such that it's impacting, you're letting yourself down over in the area of sexuality, because she didn't think these were good decisions. She thought they were mistakes. And so they began to explore the idea of whether or not this person really was a safe person for her, whether his agenda and motives toward her were healthy and good. And when she left that confession, the second one, she thought, "I'm not doing this again. This guy actually doesn't care about me. And to him, this is casual. I'm being used in this." So she could make a better choice then and avoid avoid that place, avoid that much alcohol use in those circumstances, etc. And she could shake it up so she wasn't in a position again where she would make that choice. So anyway, what am I saying to you? There's this idea that every priest is as good as every priest and that you can't challenge them. And really, someone should have gone back to him and said, you're out of your box. You don't get to say that you're going to hold someone in, you're going to withhold absolution for something like that. It's kind of like this idea that sexual sin is like the only baddest thing that's out there. And it has to go. That idea has to go because everyone's becoming obsessed with sin. I'm sorry, sex and sin. And it's damaging, never mind people's sex lives, it's damaging connection for human beings. And that happy, loving, delightful thing we find when we meet someone who we, click with. It should be a delightful thing. And it shouldn't be, casual sexual contact is always going to be a mistake, really. I mean, we talk about chastity, which is really just purity. It's like saying, okay, I'm not going to throw around my sexuality and have it be misused by me or another person. We define that as, we say that chastity requires an apprenticeship of self-mastery. So like there's room for mistakes and there's room for learning it. You have to learn how to be a sexual person. Just like we talked about your relationship, say, with money or shopping or gambling. Psychology is involved there, your mind and your emotions. And you have to figure that out so that you can make good choices. The sexuality is the same. There shouldn't be all the drama around it. I guess where the drama came from is that the consequences of casual sex were so severe for women. I mean, so severe that it was hit with a big amount of fear and threat, so that the idea being protection. Well, Christ does want to protect us. And our teachings in our Catholic faith are beautiful, and they do protect us. But we need to know what they are properly. Again, the apprenticeship of self-mastery, the learning that's involved with, would reduce the drama of that circumstance where the young woman makes a sexual mistake 2 weeks in a row. That would come straight down. Maybe people don't care anymore. Maybe they just do whatever they want sexually. Maybe those days are passé. But I'm telling you the truth. I think there's a lot of guilt and shame around sexuality and sexual mistakes. And I think, for example, the use of pornography, I wonder if that priest would have refused to absolve her of that sin. Or a young man who came in, would he have said, no, you just did it yesterday or last week. I'm not going to absolve you. I mean, what the heck? Where are we going with this? You need to think for yourself. And you just say, the minute I said I was sorry, Christ forgave me. The minute I experienced regret or remorse or went, darn it, I shouldn't have done that. Maybe that wasn't the best choice. And maybe I should try something new so that I can avoid that mistake. Christ is in that. He's in that. Confession is a healing sacrament. It's to give you the graces to forgive yourself. Christ forgives you when you say you're sorry. There's something called the primacy of conscience, and it can't be misused, and we can talk about it, but it's the idea that your conscience is the last stop. Like, if somebody dies without confession, are they going to hell? That's crazy. We know better. Because right there, it would say that all non-Catholics are going to hell because they don't practice the sacrament of confession. If you say, well, no, it's only for Catholics, then you're saying, oh, Catholics are going to hell if they don't have confession. Then you're saying, well, gee, it's tough being a Catholic because you really are held to a really cruel standard that not everyone can meet. That can't be true. No, I don't think that's it. I don't think it is true. What I would say to you is that confession graces, the graces of the sacrament of reconciliation, are such that they reconcile you with your mistakes. Christ can handle our mistakes, believe me. He kept Judas with him right up until the last moment. Don't worry about that. Don't get to this dramatic idea that your mistakes are worse than anyone else's. That's not true. It's not true. The other thing I would say to you is, generally speaking, people are making about the same mistakes. Uh, Priests have heard it all, and that doesn't impress them. Most priests, the well-adjusted holy priests, we don't even remember the details of what they say. What we remember is the important thing, which is their spirit of penitence, like where they say, I really wish I hadn't done that because I hurt someone. It makes me sad that I hurt someone. And then the priest will say, okay, all right. Well, Christ is in it. He can heal, and you can ask him, and he can help that person, and he can help you. And we're all in this sinfulness together. And you see, there's more of a realistic attitude. Um, your secret core and your sanctuary. You're alone with God whose voice echoes in your depths. You and God are a thing. You and God are a thing together. And nobody gets in between you and God, because that would be the idea that somebody can come before God and represent God to you up here so you can't see God. That's wrong. That's not real. Your relationship with God is real. It's constant in that he doesn't stop looking to be with you. And people will make mistakes about God, and they will misrepresent him to you. And you have to know God enough to say, I don't think so. I don't think God would view me like that. I don't think God would say that to me. I don't think God thinks like that. I've heard people say, the God I know wouldn't do that. And I think in that is what's that demonstrates is every person's unique journey to knowing God. Every person knows God differently. The thing about truth, well, I'm telling you the truth. Okay, truth is a big thing. And we all get to the truth about God from a different direction. Here's God. Here's us making our way up to the truth about God. Someone else is coming from this direction. Someone else is coming from this direction. The truth is objective. People say these days, oh, she is speaking her truth, or he is speaking his truth. It drives me kind of nutty, because I think there's only one truth. There's only one objective truth. But people have different vantage points when they're looking at the truth. So I can understand why they would say that. But really, truth is objective. It's really big, and we all are standing in different positions looking at it. So I understand why someone might say she's speaking her truth. And I love the idea of someone's voice getting heard. I love someone saying, you know what, I've got something to say too. And I have an opinion on that that's quite different. I see it differently because of something that happened to me. Great, I love it. But no, there's only one truth. We're just standing looking at it from different directions. So what's the point of that story about the confession? We laughed about that story because we thought that is like one of the worst things that can ever happen to you. You go to confession to confess a sin, and someone's like, you know what you did last week? Blah, blah, blah. You're like, oh my God, this is terrible. What a tough experience. What a tough experience, huh? Now, the person who experienced this didn't report it that way. What she said was, oh, it didn't bother me at all. I thought there was something wrong with him, and I just went somewhere else. So I would love it if we were all kind of thinking that not every priest is perfect. Not every teacher is perfect. Not every parent is perfect. Our families are mixed bags. We have to live with that. Our clergy are mixed bags. I know so many priests I love. They're my brothers, and they're saintly. But they're all different. And I know some who aren't so saintly. It's like, let's just be honest and not make it too big a deal when we encounter imperfection and distortion. But let's also not pretend that it didn't happen. right? We need people in the church who are willing to say, that's messed up. I don't like it. I don't believe that person's representing God, and I have a problem with that. And that is my vantage point, where I'm standing looking at the truth. That's what I see. That's my voice talking about this piece of the truth. Fun stuff. I love it because it's about renewal of our faith, and it's going to take you and a lot of people like you to make that happen. Thank you.